Hi there, and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now, today you're actually finding me at an exhibition. Now, unfortunately, it's not as grand as the exhibition I was at last year, which of course was the Great Electric Train Show in Milton Keynes, and of course that is on this weekend. So I have very fond memories of that experience last year, and as a comparison, the local train show here in Christchurch is on here in New Zealand, and as you can see, it is not a patch, obviously, on the Great Electric Train Show, possibly a quarter, a tenth of the size of the exhibition in Milton Keynes. But nonetheless, this is a fantastic show, and there's a lot of fantastic model railways on display. And also there is an opportunity to pick up a few bargains. So yeah, going back to a year ago it was that I was in the UK, and of course was travelling around up to Whitby, York, down to Kent, see Paul at his layout, Sandwin Junction, and then with Milton Keynes as well, where the Git show was on. So hopefully maybe next year might get back to the UK. So in the meantime anyway, what we're going to do is carry on with some stuff on Station Road layout, which has been happening over the last week or two. So as I mentioned, that's my local train show, which of course comes about once a year, and coincidentally it falls on the same weekend as the Get show in the UK. So I did take some footage of some of the layouts. I didn't manage to get around all the layouts because I was also actually on the help desk there, which of course is part of the responsibilities of the Model Railway Club that I belong to. So there's just under 5 minutes worth of footage, which I will leave at the end of this video for you to enjoy. So getting back to this project that I've been working on the Station Road layout, which is all about extending the platforms and doing new station buildings and so forth. And of course in the last episode I got up to the base scatter for this hillside area, of course, where the tunnel has been backfilled, and of course there was also a little bit of modification with one of the abutments for the old bridge, and sort of rearranging that and rearranging a little bit of the hill slope. So in today's episode we're going to continue with that backfilled area and start applying some static grass. So there's essentially really two layers. There's a base layer of static grass, and then there's some areas of additional layered static grass over the top. So later in this video I'll also be revealing what my plans are for the station buildings. So back at the beginning of this series, I think I mentioned that I'm going to replace the Metcalfe station buildings that are currently there at the moment, and think of designing, building, or scratch building some station buildings which of course are based on a real railway station. And of course at the time I was still really sort of figuring out, well, I've got to do a bit of research and figure out a railway station somewhere in the UK, whether it's still currently in use or maybe it's been pulled down, maybe it's an old station that doesn't exist any longer. So anyway, I've now made a decision, and I'll be revealing the station in question that I'm going to attempt to model. So I think without further ado, let's just get into this static grass application and see how I go. So obviously the first thing I've done here is I'm putting in this little bit of a beaten track. So as I mentioned in the previous episode, the idea that at least some people have managed to find their way to the top of this wee tunnel portal in the attempt to try and get in there. So I've just sprinkled basically dirt from the garden that's been dried out, and that's just over a strip of PVA glue. So we're just going to press that down now and vacuum up the excess, but it's just the foundation basically of, or the suggestion that there's a bit of a beaten track here that people have taken through the overgrowth to try and get into this tunnel portal, or into the tunnel. So that's the path in place, and basically I wanted to put that in first so that when it comes to spreading the glue, which I'm going to use for the static grass, that I'll actually go either side of the path. And this is just watered down Mod Podge, which seems to really work quite well for static grass. And in here we have a mixture that's I think 2 or 2.5 mil and a bit of 4 mil. Unfortunately I don't have any 2 mil sort of burnt or straw type grass, but I'm hoping this will be okay, and it'll be kind of a blend of these two that we're going to try in here. So we're just going to work away at this in sections, starting up at the top. So you probably noticed I've actually swapped out my static grass applicator. So I was using my homemade one from a electric fly swap, but I think it needs some new batteries in it, and although it's been fine, it's nowhere near as powerful as my plug-in static grass applicator, which of course is also actually homemade, but I didn't make it. It was a fellow railway modeller was selling some of his gear, and of course I snapped up at the opportunity to buy one of his static grass applicators that he made himself. But you plug it into the mains power, and so there's no batteries that need replacing, and it is super powerful. I mean, it's not that the charge is not mains power, but it is, I think it's a 24, 12 volt or something like that, might be more, 24 possibly. It's enough to give you a bit of a buzz, I can tell you that, but it is certainly a lot more powerful. Right, so that's got the base layer of static grass down. So as I mentioned, 2.5 mil for the sort of a greener colour, and 4 mil for a sort of straw colour. So we're just going to let that thoroughly dry, and I'll probably leave it for a day or two, come back, vacuum it up, and then we'll start layering over the next lot of static grass. So the static grass machine, of course, that I mentioned, which was made by a fellow railway modeller, is this wee unit here, and it works quite well. You know, well, I should say it actually works fantastically actually compared to my fly swat. So it's, I think, there's no specs on it. All I know is it's extremely powerful, but you know, it looks like it's been professionally bought, but yeah, it's just a homemade unit. Right, so it's now actually a few days later, and I've vacuumed up all the excess and loose static grass, and we're now ready to apply an additional layer of static grass. So the layering spray that I'm actually using is just simply a matte clear varnish, and it works quite well, and I wouldn't be surprised if, say, the World War Scenics layering spray is something quite similar. So it's probably a little bit more grunty than hairspray, because I know that some people use hairspray, and of course you don't get all that sort of fragrant smell, but it seems to work quite well, this stuff here. So what we've actually got in our wee static grass tray here is a couple of, well, two different types. They're both 6mm, they're both a knock product, and one is sort of an olive green, and then we've got a straw colour. So I'm predominantly probably going to use the straw colour. So of course the beauty about the static grass applicator that I've got is, of course, there is a couple of reservoirs, and of course I can fill both of them, so we can have two different types of static grass going at the same time without having to empty a single reservoir. So I'm going to probably put the olive green in this one and the straw one in that one there, and then I can just simply switch them out as I go. So we'll start doing this now. What I'm doing is, I sort of initially thought about masking this tunnel area, but I'm kind of thinking if I get in really close with this, I can get reasonably accurate spray around here without getting it on everything else. Well, that's the theory, so hopefully that's going to work okay. So we'll just fill up these reservoirs and we'll get into it. Right, so that's the second layer of static grass now applied, and it's looking pretty shaggy at the moment, but obviously once this is dry and I go over it with the vacuum cleaner, it's going to obviously suck up a lot of this excess clumps of static grass that is here at the moment. But I won't do that at the moment, because otherwise it may just actually pull up the whole lot. But it's certainly starting to look a little bit more wild and unkept looking, which is basically the look that I'm going for. So there we have it. That's really the basis for the static grass application, and of course I've now actually vacuumed off some of the excess, and it's really starting to look more sort of natural. It's certainly looking a lot more overgrown and unkept, a little bit wild and wilderness looking, and of course with the addition of foliage and brambles and all sorts of other items like that in the next episode, I think it will really start to take shape. So moving on to the station buildings and what my plans are. Now, as you know, there's a number of buildings, scratch-built buildings on my layout, which are based on real buildings that I've adapted or changed slightly possibly to suit the layout, but otherwise they're very much influenced by existing buildings or buildings that possibly are demolished now but used to exist. Now this is the plan that I have for the station buildings, and that was to locate, find a suitable building, whether it's in existence or used to exist, and base my design off that particular building. Now I thought there's hundreds of stations in the UK, and I thought this could actually be quite a momentous task. But then I sort of had a thought. Now there is a YouTube channel that I watch very regularly, find it very entertaining, very interesting, and quite a lot of historical information, and that is the Old Station Renovation, which of course is operated by Laura and Gil. Now a lot of you possibly might be aware of this channel and their interesting journey that they've taken renovating an old disused railway station. Now I actually approached Laura and Gil and asked them, would I be able to build a model of your station, and maybe we could collaborate together in terms of building a station, of course, for my layout, and building a station for them to have on their bookcase, pride of place, how their home, which is of course this railway station, might have actually looked back when it was an operational line. Now they actually love the idea, and so we're sort of going to team together on this collaboration and build their railway station. So they've got plenty of photos, they do have some more sort of modern plans and so forth, and of course there's plenty of local people that know a lot about the station, where they're located, in terms of what it used to be like, obviously, when it was an operational line. So I think this is actually going to be a really fascinating project, and of course I thank Laura and Gil immensely for allowing me to do this and for us to collaborate together. So I think it's going to be a really fantastic project, and I'm really sort of looking forward to jumping into it. And once again, it'll be using the same techniques that I've used previously, so there'll be a lot of laser cut work, there'll be a lot of designing the station on the computer, producing the laser cut work, and then of course it's going to be similar obviously to the Scale Sense downloadable kits, where the brick texture is a printed material that is wrapped and so forth. So of course one of the really fascinating, interesting things that we'll be able to do here is I can get Gil or Laura to photograph the side of one of their walls, their exterior walls, and actually use their brickwork as the pattern for the brickwork. So yeah, there's a lot of, you know, exciting and interesting possibilities in this. And the other thing that I do hope to do, would be really fascinating to do, is actually do fully modelled interiors as well, so how the station used to be originally, and yeah, that would be absolutely fascinating. So there we have it. That's the plans for the station, and well, once again, progress as well is slowly taking place, of course, where this old tunnel is, and that's been backfilled now. We now have the static grass and so forth, and I think now that we've got that sort of underway, I'm hoping that we can really start to actually get into the station side, getting into the platform design, and of course, as I mentioned, this station buildings. So of course, as I mentioned, I'll leave you some footage from the train show that I attended this weekend. So I certainly hope you've enjoyed today's video, gained some inspiration and ideas for your own layouts. Do take care, look after yourselves. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.